Dynamic Conversations, where families and stories come in all shapes and sizes. I come from a family of 12. You may be an only child. What matters is caring, sharing, and finding ways to relate to one another. Welcome to Family Dynamic Conversations podcast. I am your host, Janice Kingsbury. Thank you for joining me today. Have you moved around a lot in your life? I know I have. Maybe it creates new opportunities to meet new people, get to experience new cultures and life. I have moved around so many times in my life, I've lost count. But in the last 8 years, I've moved 4 times. So I work for a wonderful company called REI, Recreational Equipment Incorporated, and they have allowed me to transfer from store to store every time I moved. They've been very generous. So this does create opportunities to meet new people, create new friends, and lasting relationships, by the way. I've been with the company 13 years now. So that leads me to my guest today. One being Jake, who I work with currently, and second, Clara, who I am learning more about. Thank you for joining me, guys. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So we'll start with you, Jake. I'm going to ask how many in your family and what number are you in that family?
All right. My name is Jake Simmons. I am one of 6. I am the 6th. There are 2 older. Parker, he's 32. He's the oldest. He's got twins now. Madison comes next. She's around 29, I believe. And then the quadruplets, which are Mina, Malia, Molly. I'm the last one, but we're all 26.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's quite the dynamic. We'll have to dive in at some point. That's wonderful. And how about yourself, Clara?
So I am one of 2. I have an older brother who is 27, and then I am 22, so I'm the youngest.
Nice. Okay. Now, I just recently had the opportunity to talk to Jake about his family and the dynamic in his family. And Jake, are you up to sharing how that whole family came together?
I could tell you from the quad's perspective on like just how that happened.
Yeah.
For where every sibling sits. So Parker is my dad's, and then Parker has his own mom. So Parker would be a half brother.
Okay.
Madison is fully my mom, fully my dad.
Okay.
And then the quadruplets are my dad, and then in vitro, but we have my mom's blood as well. So Madison would be the only Simmons, both mom and dad. Parker would be half, and then quads are half as well.
Okay. So, and you are part of the quad?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the quad is you, 1 boy, and 3 girls.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And God, that is so fun. So the 4 of you get together, and it's just you of the quad. Do you have this special bond relationship between the 4 of you, or is it just you're my brother, you're my sister?
I feel like there's a special bond, but we still treat each other like how normal siblings would, kind of just a lot of time cranky and like bossing each other around and then just like giving sass back and forth. But I feel like we kind of have more of a pride in that group, in that because it's more tight knit. And we've always been close, especially in high school and college. We grew a lot closer. So growing up now, everyone lives local and we're all pretty close still. So we hang out as much as possible. We like board games and all that stuff. So we see each other pretty often too.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And you all have similar talents?
It's interesting for us. We all think very similarly, but we all have different interests. So there's one sibling that I'm closest with and we share the same hobbies to some extent.
Okay.
But the other 2, a big book nerd. So she's more kind of what Clara is. So reading, just like science, Harry Potter, like all that stuff. And she's going into teaching. So she's already good in that aspect, like her brain functions that way. Malia is more stoic, super stoic. You don't know what she's thinking ever. She's like a robot, but she's super analytical. So she can get stuff done pretty quickly as well. And she'll be quiet about it. Molly is like more similar to me, I would say. Very like ADHD, just like, woohoo, whatever. Like, just go with the flow. And we both have the same hobbies as well. So we all have, everyone's separate from the group, which is individualized as well, which is really awesome.
Yes.
But we all think the same stuff is funny and we like the same movies and I all have the same, very similar interests as well. So.
I love that. And what about you, Clara? Just being the two of you find yourself quite opposite of is a brother, correct?
Yes, older brother.
Yeah. Do you find yourself quite opposite or very similar in that kind of way?
I would definitely say a mixture of both. We have our commonalities just in how we were raised and our shared experiences, I would say, but we do have very separate interests. We both, in the way that we both like the outdoors, but the way we like to spend our time outdoors is different. And he enjoys being more around horses and that kind of outdoors, where for me, it's just like a hike or playing soccer or things like that. So we have a lot of commonalities, but the way we might pursue them are a bit different. So more like that, I guess I would say.
Okay. Now, I know with Jake, with your father being the common line through all of you, do you find yourself having similar traits with him? Or because, mom and dad both brought you up, you had kind of took mom's talents and attitudes
Hmm.
and went in that direction? Do you notice a difference?
I do. I feel like there's a couple traits that I see myself through my dad, which I don't want,
Oh,
but I've picked up along the way, which I wouldn't say bad, but
okay.
I think from learning like childhood trauma and realizing like, oh, this is baggage that I've picked up.
Mm,
There are
okay.
certain traits from both parent that I've picked up. For my mom, I guess for the pros is the love of gardening and the love of nature. So everything that aspect is something Clara and I can kind of dive deep into as well. But we'll like geek out on these like stupid plants and be like, oh my gosh, look at this thing. And like, oh, we can eat
This is
this one.
edible.
Yeah, so we
Nice.
we get really into that type of stuff, which is fun too. For my dad, I wouldn't say we're very similar most aspects, but I know how he works, so I know how to navigate just his mind a bit easier. One of
Nice.
my sisters, Mina, she'll butt heads with him a lot,
Yeah.
and the rest of the quads and the rest of the siblings in general will just be like, "You guys can go to your thing, but I'm gonna like just lay under the radar." So most of the time with my parents, I do kind of go under the radar for the most part. I get along with them, but I'm not like I kind of keep my distance for the most part too. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting.
Hmm.
And Clara, do you think in any of your studies that you found that to be kind of a common thing with the situation that Jake is in?
In regard to the things that he gets from both parents, or
That and the ability to recognize how to deal with one parent, but differently with the other parent.
yeah, definitely. And I think while most of what I looked at in my classes and that sort of thing
Yeah,
looked more at just like a mother-father dynamic, just because that's where the most research is, there is a lot of discussion about how the relationship with mother and father can be quite different, but that doesn't mean that they don't both have their added benefits or sometimes flaws depending on the situation.
yeah.
But there is definitely discussion about how traditionally and where the research lies, the mother kind of has certain things that she provides to the kids. And then typically those are like the main needs that that kid needs, whether it's in regard to like emotional needs or physical needs, food, comfort, that sort of thing. But then the father
Right.
can still follow through. And even if it's not those what are deemed like immediate needs, they're
Mm.
still valuable and it can be just as important to that child's development.
Fantastic. And what about with you? Do you feel like you, Clara, that you've taken on certain characteristics more from your mom or from your dad?
Yeah, so my dad isn't particularly involved in my life currently.
Okay.
He wasn't the best guy, for lack of better terms. And so he hasn't been in mine and my brother's lives for since about middle school for me, and since my brother's older for him, like the end of high school-ish. My brother did spend more time with my father just in that he was brought into the world first. So he
I see.
definitely, I would say, has a few more obvious traits that he has inherited from
Interesting.
my dad, and my mom's has noticed that as well, just kind of in how they problem solve or how they face certain tasks.
Interesting.
That also could be looked at through a lens of gender potentially, just because it's the same sex parent. And there are certain traits from my father I've noticed as well, ones that I would say maybe I'm not the most proud of, and some of the ones my brother has, it's the same, but they are part of who we are and have helped us learn what we do or don't want to do in the future. And then same for my mother, just I would say we have more of her positive traits, which is nice. Just kind of along the same lines, there's traits I would say I recognize from each parent. However, there are ones that I would probably say I choose to focus on more or try to engage with more, given where they come from.
And for both of you, we'll just stay with you, Clara, right now. Like I was saying before, with talents, is there something athletic or artistic or, like you said, analytical, compassionate? Is that something that each of you have picked up from either of your parents?
I would say so. I think that my mom has always been very giving, and that's something that got her into the relationship with my father, but also helped her realize what was best for my brother and I, and eventually leave that relationship.
Okay.
So I would say that that kind of just took a lot of strength and courage in being able to do that, especially where we were. Divorce wasn't really looked at in a great light. So being able to do that by herself and just the courage and compassion and the love that she still was able to allow my brother and I to feel despite the circumstances we were in are something that I hope to make other people feel and make
Nice.
them feel as loved, and hopefully one day my own children being able to with
Yeah.
my partner create that same love, even hopefully with different circumstances.
Love it. I love that. And is there a artistic side or athletic side or something in that nature at all?
Yes, so my mom did play soccer her whole life, and that was
Okay.
the sport I picked up as well. I was engaged in other sports. I also did volleyball and lacrosse.
Nice.
But soccer was just something that her and I really bonded over. She was always at every game, which at the time doesn't seem that significant, but looking back really meant a lot to me, having her
Huge.
there to support me.
Yes.
And it's just kind of like you see those videos on the internet, and this is something Jake and I have talked about, where you see like the kid walking on stage and looking around for their parents, and then their face kind of lights up when they see them.
Right?
So I think
Ugh,
sport
just got
allowed my,
chills.
yeah, I know that always gets me. But my mom was always that for me, which is something I'm very grateful for. And I think soccer allowed us to show each other. For me, it was, I'm going to work so hard and I'm going to show you how important this is to me. And for
Nice.
her to kind of recognize how important it was to me.
Love it. Love it. And how about for you, Jake? You said gardening. You mentioned gardening and outdoors,
Gard
nature.
Gardening from my mom, definitely water polo from my dad's side. So he
Nice.
grew up playing polo. I can't tell you when he started, but
Okay.
he had his CIF rings from high school and then his rings from records from college and stuff. And so he got Mina, Molly, and me in it. We tried getting Malia to join, but she did dance is cool, but water polo we might have started at 7 or 8 years old and then played all the way up till college too. Like
Fantastic.
what Claire was saying too is my dad showed up to every single game and I didn't realize that the significance when I was younger, but looking back at it now, it proved to show. I mean, he cared and he was there to watch us play and see us improve as well. He coached for a bit when we must have been like 10 or so. So he kind of always coached me while I was even in the game. He'd like yell like, Jake, don't do this. And I'm like stop. Yeah, that I ended up just like I could hear his voice while I played and it ended up making me a better player as well. So he pushed me pretty hard, but he did find a lot of joy watching his daughters and me play as well. I think that's where he was most proud of. He could like have that pride in his children and he was very supportive for the water polo aspect as well. And the girls ended up going farther than me. Molly and Mina did really, really well. Mina ended up playing at UCLA and she got into the NCAA, I think the championships a couple times at UCLA. And Molly
Wow.
did pretty well. She had a couple good stats at UCSB, but they had really good high school and college careers as well. So it was really
Love it.
cool to watch them just do their best, which was really awesome too.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'd play each other and UCLA would just wreck UCSB
Right.
and they'd always fight in the water, the girls would, and it's always just entertaining to watch. It was a huge part of the childhood too, and he was always there for that too. So that was really awesome that Clara brought that up as well.
That's very cool. Moving on to like what's important to you right now. Clara, you have just graduated, is that correct?
Yes, this
Okay.
past spring. I studied both biology and psychology. So, where I graduated with a BS in biology and a BA in psychology. And then, with psychology specifically, I did my senior thesis looking at adverse childhood experiences and then also how those could play a role in the development of either later becoming a victim or a perpetrator of domestic violence or intimate partner violence. So,
Interesting.
overall, that was just my senior thesis, but I did have a large emphasis on adverse childhood experiences. And I just took, I think, probably from a place of where I was brought up. And I think everyone kind of at a certain point starts looking for their own answers and to make their own ideas about certain things. So it was kind of my
Absolutely.
opportunity to pursue and maybe help myself understand certain things better and hopefully eventually help other people.
I was talking with my niece about how one of her professors, but she talked about the many layers we have as we grow up, and that can either filter any light coming in to resolve a problem, or the idea of, well, I've learned that, now I'm going to have to layer that on top of this and make sure that I don't mess this up or that I strive harder. Did you find that something in your studies, that people just can pile on a lot of this stuff as they grow?
Yeah, and I think that kind of along those lines, it's been interesting to learn what it can take because I think most people have negative experiences in some sense, and lots of times people may try to compare, mine was worse or yours was worse or things like that. And
Yeah.
there really is no benefit to that. But a lot of the research that I did look at covered how there are certain mediators that can kind of affect how those experiences dictate or play a role in what comes next. And something that I always thought was kind of interesting was the idea of like self-efficacy. And if you have a child who they're constantly faced with different adversities and they believe that they are capable of overcoming it. There's somebody in their life, whether it's a teacher or a friend or a friend's parents, that, or
Yes.
even a coach, because I think we both have a lot of interest in sports and
Yeah.
coaches play a big role in that, that says, like, you're capable or I believe in you. And being able to focus a lot on achievements is also really beneficial to a child's self esteem and
Okay.
their development of that self concept and who they are, which is the self concept, and how they feel about who they are, which is kind of more the idea of self esteem. I always found it really interesting that just because you have certain things happen doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like follow the script that was written for you by society, and that we can help kids kind of mediate those factors.
Yes. My apologies for this interruption, but I found it very important that I stop and acknowledge Clara's insight into childhood development and the idea of mentoring and parenting having a significant impact on childhood development and self-esteem. Thank you, Clara, for that insight. Back to your regularly scheduled program. And so when I started the podcast, I talked about moving several times. Have you guys had to move in your young life? Or
Just
have you
once.
stayed once?
Yeah.
Okay, Jake. How about you, Clara?
I have lived, I would say, in like three major areas in my life. Growing up, I lived in the absolute middle of nowhere in Alturas area, California, in like the
Okay.
tippy top corner. And then for most of my like formative years, I was in Sacramento area. Then we moved like twice there. And then here in San Diego, California, where I am now, is I've moved twice. So I think a total of 4 or 5 times.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Jake, you haven't moved at all.
Not really. It was
Not once.
from Irvine to Orange, so not that far.
Okay. Have you found that your friends stayed stable and the same throughout your
Yeah,
life?
I talk to Claire about this pretty often too, but my closest friends I made when I was 8 years old. So I've only made a couple more past that, but the closest friends I do have are from water polo and have all stayed in the same area as well. So,
I think
no,
that's
I am
wonderful.
fortunate. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's very cool.
But from Irvine, do you remember growing up in Irvine? We did live in the desert in Palm Springs for maybe a year.
Okay.
I did kindergarten there. I do remember my room very vividly. It was a cool room. Whatever. And then from Irvine till just Irvine to in middle school, we left in middle school to go to high school in Orange County.
Okay.
And then we started taking care of our grandma around that time as well. So probably 2012 back then.
So my story is I too was divorced and moved from Southern California, El Segundo area to Philadelphia. So, and that's where my first REI job was. Go Conshohock and REI. But I brought with me my daughter, and she was in middle school. And then my son stayed with his dad in Southern California in El Segundo, where he grew up. And his friends are tight, tight close. And my daughter had to develop a way of meeting new friends and establishing friendships. And then she went to college there in Pennsylvania, where she again created more friendships. As soon as her school years were done in Pittsburgh and the driving in the snow, she was like, I have to get back to Southern California. I can't. I can't deal with this.
Totally understandable.
Yeah. And I too moved from Minnesota to Southern California as soon as I turned 21 because I hated the winter, shoveling and snow. So I get that. But getting back to her moving during your middle school years. So, Jake, you moved when you were in middle school. So
Mhm.
you had some pretty long term friends before
Mhm.
you moved.
Yeah.
And did that affect you in a negative way at all, or did it not bother you that much?
I got lucky in the sense where the kids who I grew up playing club polo with ended up going to the same high school as me. So
Cool.
the coach that my favorite coach, his name's Steve Carrera, he coached me from 8 till high school. So I had him as a coach for a long, long time.
Super
I
cool.
don't know how he got it to work, but the kids I grew up with from 8 years old till middle school, and then he convinced all those parents, go to Orange Lutheran. So all of that, the entire team, we stayed all the way till high school with all the same guys. So luckily, when I was making new friends, it was only in school, but it wasn't when I moved. I had the same exact team from 8 years old till 17. So it was
That's
really awesome.
very cool. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I bet that helped your self esteem quite a bit.
Big time. Yeah, those guys are all really cool too. I'm probably close with maybe 3 or 4 of them now, but I
Yeah.
would say that if I were to see any of them on the street, we'd have a great time. So, yeah.
I love it. And then, Clara, you moved, you said in middle school too?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
main move from Northern California to Southern California was going into seventh grade, so right after sixth grade.
And that was quite a jump. I mean, that was quite a
Yes.
distance. Yeah. And how did
Yeah.
you fare with all of that?
I would say pretty well overall. Looking back, there was definitely a time period where I remember it being quite difficult, but after the kind of transition period, just because there's so many transitions kind of going on at that point in time, I would say I settled in very well, and I was fortunate to maintain contact that I'm still in contact with two friends from Northern California. Just kind of in that age period, there was like a bigger group of friends, I would say, that we all grew up together. But then after I moved, some other people moved, and then just there was a couple falling out. So it was just kind of that like age development point where some friends stayed close, some didn't.
Yeah.
So one is, I would say, still to this day, one of my best friends. And so I was very fortunate because we were able to call and FaceTime and do all that sort of stuff, which
Yeah.
eased the transition. I think I would have really struggled much more if I didn't have that relationship.
Yes.
And then going into middle school, seventh grade, Northern California and Southern California are definitely way more different, I think, than a lot of people realize. So there was
Agreed.
just kind of some of those like societal things to get used to and how people are raised or brought together, especially I went to like a very small middle and high school. So everything was very cliquey and you either fit in or you didn't. Everyone to some extent had to kind of evolve in some way to at least meet people. And then once you met the people you were close with, it was much easier from there.
Yes.
But it was initially a tough transition, but then especially with sports too, I found my
Oh,
place.
the expectation of going into that sport with something already established, or what did
Yeah,
you find
so
struggle with?
sports helped with the struggle more so, I would say, because in Northern California, especially when my dad was still in the picture more so, that was a big escape for me. And I had to go to practice and I had to be there. And when I was there, I was playing my sport with my friends and I was very present. And I think that that kind of just didn't help me escape as much as it allowed me to be a kid. It was something I looked forward to. And it was difficult in not knowing anyone and just kind of being thrown into a new league with new people and new coaches,
Yeah.
but it was something that I knew and something I was comfortable at. And at the time I knew I was, or I felt good about it at least. So
Cool.
it was concrete with everything else moving around. I still had my sports to get back to. And eventually I made friends through that, which allowed me to, if I had a bad day at school, I still had sports. Or if I had a bad day at sports, I still had school friends. So everything just kind of balanced out and it gave me another place to kind of exist outside of home and school.
I love that. Yeah, that's important. Very important. Now we're moving into a little bit of, well, for you, Jake, why did you choose REI? Was it something that you were just getting a job so that you could start paying for stuff? Was it something that, oh, I know this culture, I know the commitment to the outdoors, that kind of thing, and you have another goal in life right now? So what brought you to REI?
I've worked maybe like 6 jobs in the past 2 years. And
Okay.
so I've just been kind of like moving from one to the next. and a lot of the past ones just weren't for me. I do think that you can work so hard at a job until you get burnt out. Luckily at REI, it's not that at all.
Good.
During the time when I did apply at REI, I didn't think I was going to get the job. I was just like, hey, that looks like it would be fun. Let me put the application in and then just like sit on it.
Yeah.
I was dirt broke at that time. I think I had maybe $5 or $6 in my bank, and I just sat at home and I didn't do anything because I like had no way to make money. I was going on a camping trip, I believe, with my family, and REI called me and they were like, hey, we have an interview for you. I'm like somewhere in the middle of Idaho in the freeway. And I'm like, well, my connection's bad, but like I can call you if you want. And so fortunately that it all worked out, and I've always been there for a year now, which is really awesome. So when I applied, I was like, REI could be super awesome, but I didn't know anything else about it. Like I shopped there a couple times, but I didn't really think about it how I do now as well. I was just like, oh, it's just retail. Like I've done retail before. It's probably a piece of cake. This is a total different ballpark, REI, but it's super awesome. For I guess what I'm working towards as well. Originally, I was working towards naturopathic medicine, realizing I'm like not the best student. I've always been just like, if I can see it and visualize it, I can apply it in real life stuff. So when I've done like ocean lifeguard and pool lifeguard or even EMT stuff, when it's visualizing skills and applying those skills to real life events, I can perfect that and actually remember it a lot better. So
That's very cool.
with that, I'm going back to fire classes. I'm almost done. I have 2 left until I'm done, and then the academy. I was doing that originally, and then I ended up working at a hospital for a while. I worked at OC Global, which is in Orange. It's a trauma hospital. I did that for maybe 6 months, but it was just ER stuff. So I kind of got burnt out from there. Instead of being on an ambulance and going on just like random calls, it was gunshot wounds, stabbings, like all the more intense stuff, and you kind of get numb to it. I did that, got burnt out, and I was like, maybe fire's not for me. I think at the time when I did make that decision, though, I haven't had someone to kind of be a mentor. So I know what direction I need to go, but I don't really know how to get to where I need to be or like what actions I need to take. So I just would repeat the things that my friends would do and be like, this seems fun. I'll do it with my friends. I ended up doing pretty well in those classes, and those were the first A's I've ever gotten in college, which was cool.
Yes.
I'm actually getting good grades in college. This is not what I'm used to, so this is cool. About a month ago, I made the decision, maybe like 2 weeks. I talked to this about Clara as well, just to go back to fire, at least in this aspect or in this point in my life, to kind of get a stable career under the belt, and at least work towards something that I can be like, this will be for my retirement. That way I can provide for Clara as much as possible while she is starting to study for her MCAT and all that stuff as well. So I'm making that transition to kind of like dial in that aspect. And I do think it would be something that I'll be passionate about as well and find purpose with as well. And then if I want to go back to anything, I'll go back to nutrition when I retire, and we'll make more money that way too. But as for now, I'm working as much as possible to save up for school and then potentially just provide for Clara as well, because she's awesome. So.
Oh, you guys are amazing. I love that. And now, Clara, as you've graduated now, and now you've gone into a position, now the position you're in right now, is it something directly correlating to what you studied, or is this just a step to get you in that direction?
I would say it's a mixture of both. So the position I'm starting is working as a behavioral therapist with kids who have autism. So what I will be doing is I'm going to start my training this upcoming week, and then I go through the process of getting my state certification as a behavioral therapist. And then I'll kind of shadow somebody, and then eventually I'll get my own clients and just kind of have the same week to week and getting to work with kids who, like I said, have autism and their families to help just develop life skills and help the family be able to better communicate, especially with kids who are nonverbal or that sort of thing. Help the kid better express their wants and needs, and then help the family be more receptive and better able to provide what that child needs.
Very cool. So life's going to change, throw different things at you. But as you sit right now today, what would your best dream job be, do you think, at this moment?
So ultimately, what I am working towards is to hopefully become a psychiatrist, which requires getting your MD. So that's, as Jake mentioned, why I'm going to be studying for and taking the MCATs right now. And then working with these kids will also provide me with some patient contact hours, which is necessary when applying to medical school. I think that this position allows me to work with kids, which is something I'm very passionate about, as well as working in kind of a behavioral therapy kind of standpoint, which hopefully would allow me to gain certain experience or expertise needed to down the line work. I think right now something I'm considering is doing pediatric psychiatry, so working
That'd
with kids,
be great.
but obviously things change, and everyone I've talked to has said like don't close your doors, keep your
Yeah,
mind open and that sort of thing. But as of right now, psychiatry I think is what I am most excited about or hoping to work towards.
that's very cool. Well, I hope for both of you that you do find something that just comes really easily and natural, and that you stay with it and work towards it. Just that's what brings us the joy in life, I think, when you're understanding the impact you have on someone's life, whether it be from, fatal things or psychological things, because every time I feel at 64 years old and having 11 brothers and sisters that every experience and every relationship you have somehow affects how you feel about anything in life. So these are very noble aspirations. I applaud both of you for going in those directions, because it takes a lot of courage, especially in the EMTs and fire department. Oh my God, amazingly impressive. So thank you for doing that. If it doesn't work out, I'm sure whatever you do choose will be wonderful too. And for you too, Clara, the idea of helping children, knowing that they've gone through some kind of trauma or experience that has been struggling and not easy in life, autism or what, but everybody's got their certain path, and everyone will develop in the time and space that it takes to reach whatever they're supposed to be. And I don't think anyone can determine that future at all. It's just what happens on a daily life and the decisions and the reactions you make with those changes in life. So the last thing I want to talk to you about, what do you find inspires you? What keeps you motivated in a joyful way? What keeps you not diving back into past traumas? What moves you forward? We'll start with you, Jake.
Clara is probably my biggest motivator at the moment. I'm gonna cry. Mm.
Oh,
Um,
it's very sweet.
she does a really, really good job at articulating her emotions as well, and it makes me become a better person. So everything that I'm not, she is, and I learn from her constantly. With that too, she's always motivating me to become better. She doesn't push me or like, you should do this, but she supports me in the way that it motivates me to become a better person. Um, what was the question again? I'm gonna get distracted.
If we took Clara out of it for just a
Yeah.
moment, what maybe recently or in your past did you find getting out in nature something that
Mhm.
inspired you? Is it music that you have to listen to, or is there books that you read that I know if I'm in a bad spot I can get out of it by doing what?
For me, I don't know if this is ADHD or just finding like joy in being outside, but I have so many things that I do that are outside activities. Like let's say if I surf and if the waves are flat, then I'll go on a walk. We enjoy walking a lot too.
Right.
If we don't walk, then I just got a bike, so I'll ride my bike or like
Oh,
hiking. Yeah, but we have a couple ways to like be outside, and that usually kind of brings me that peace.
but it takes you away from any kind of troubles or
Yeah.
struggles you're
Oh
dealing
yeah.
with at the time.
hmm
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
gardening or like learning about the plants and stuff too is being like we just got tomatoes and we're gonna start this little garden, so we like kind of started to like find some more peace in that, and then that can kind of motivate you to be like, hey, this will get me off my phone. This will kind of
Yes.
get me out of my head. You can start being present when you start doing activities like that as well. So that's been nice
And I
too.
feel like that will lead you into a more nutritious way of eating too. The
hmm
plants you
Yeah.
learn about and how they affect you and what you shouldn't eat or what you should eat and how
hmm
much of it. So
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
that's great. So physical activity, getting outside helps uh, your frame of mind.
Usually, yeah, usually. I do have a problem with buying books and not reading them. I have a bunch of books in my room
Oh,
that I
yeah.
start reading and I don't finish. So I have like maybe 10 books. I'm just like, dude, just finish the book and then get a new one. But I'm like, oh, this looks so good. And I'll read it
Yeah.
and be like, I really like that. But then I start going back. So I kind of just jump back and forth on all these different things.
I'll
But
show you my bookshelf. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
yeah,
They just add up so fast. And then I got hooked on Audible. So I've got all
yeah.
these books in Audible that I should probably listen to at some point, but
Mhm.
one
I
of
think
these
that
days.
like the body kind of intuitively tells you what it should be doing at that point too. If your body will know if it needs to be active, and your body will know, or
True.
your mind will know if it needs to read. So at the time, you'll now you have a bunch of books, and you can start reading one or go be active, and you're probably
Good,
doing the right thing too.
good. And how about you, Clara?
I would definitely kind of agree with the outdoors thing. I also, in the sense that it kind of switches and it depends where I'm at in life. And there's been certain things that have just helped me get through just different periods of my life. But I would
Okay.
say that a big one's definitely connection. Whether I would say the connection, what the connection is to, has changed a lot in my life. I think there were times where I needed to much better connect with myself and understand and put
Mm,
that time into understanding my own wants and needs. And that's something else that I do struggle with currently. And
I think we all struggle through that.
yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly. Whether it's because we're told what we should or shouldn't do, or what we do or don't want. So I think that connection with myself and then with others, and whether it's a super small interaction of just smiling at somebody in the grocery store, or building a more profound relationship with a significant other or friend, making those relationships with people has consistently helped me learn more about myself by connecting with those people and seeing like, wow, I really like that they do that and I want to do more of that. Or this person is really good at being outdoors and I want to be more present and more mindful. And that helps with that. And so I think connection has been a big thing. And then also just the outdoors and physical activity has always been there, because I think there's so many ways to do it. I really like podcasts and true crime. So
Ah,
anytime I'm really bored or if I'm stressed about something, I'll just like put on a podcast, distract myself,
nice.
and go for a walk or just sit and listen for a little bit. So
Love it.
those things as well.
Very cool. Very cool. And currently now you're both kind of focused on school. Are there any adventures coming up in the future, or you have just not planning anything right now because you're so focused on getting that
Uh,
working and getting school going?
well, we just went camping, and we got swarmed by wasps, so we came back
Oh
home.
my God.
My sister Molly has a trip set up for Catalina soon, so we
Oh,
could possibly do that in like a month or two, and
nice.
I'm pretty sure there won't be wasps over there. We might luck out on that, but just depending right now. I'm just working, but I'm sure that Clara, since she's just getting started with that new job too, she'll try and
Yeah.
get that a bit dialed in as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So nothing quite planned in close future. Okay, good. But
not
Catalina
on an
is, yeah,
official.
yeah.
Yes, not an official.
Okay. Well, I think this has been fun. You guys, good? You
Yeah,
feel good about it?
yeah.
Yes.
Good, good. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank both Jake and Clara for being with me today to explore a little bit think about the past, how it helps you understand where you came from, your certain attitudes, wonderful things, things you have struggles with. If there's anything you would like to put in the comments about what you would like me to talk about, I would love to hear about that. Or if you have new adventures in your life, or you've moved so much you want to just stay put for a little while. It's all good, no matter what you decide. So thanks, Jake. Thanks, Clara. And we
Thank
will see
you.
you next time on Family Dynamic Conversations podcast. Have a great day and please take care of yourself.
Thank you. That was fun.
Thank you.